What's up? What's up? What's up? It's your boy Rod the Ruler, the Almanac of Athletics, Athletic Almanac, Almanac Athletics, aka Sly Zulu. I got that channel too. And this is for the Anybody Like Sports Network. And in this video, what I'm really going to touch up on is how sometimes you can make a move too late and it could just ruin your whole team. And sometimes you could trade places with another player and you could switch realities. And one of the most intriguing stories, in my opinion, has to be the 2008-2009 season. That was a crazy season. That was a crazy year, crazy time. I was younger, crazy young. Slam magazine subscriber. I'm reading all the articles, everything. And one intriguing thing was like the Chauncey Billups and Allen Iverson move. Now, I'm gonna make a video on Allen Iverson soon on just the Allen Iverson tribute, but on this one right here, just leading up to that moment, Allen Iverson, one of my favorite players of all time, hands down. Like, I love AI as a player, competitor. He had the sauce handles and everything. He was just that dude, that super bad dude. And when he was with the Nuggets, him and Carmelo Anthony, they had a really good showmanship they put on for the fans. And in Denver, they averaged a lot of points. They were scoring a lot of points. They were one of those classic West Coast teams. They get in the 115s, 117 type of victories. In points. And they'll probably give up 108, 109, 107, at the most. Or they could just get to a shootout with you and be like, okay, we're going to go 126 to 132. We're just going to shoot it out, just shoot threes and put on the show. And Carmelo and Iverson did that. They were a really good small forward point guard or combo guard tandem. However, they wasn't really they wasn't changing nothing. The 2 years that they were together, they were 7th, 8th seeders, but they put on a good show. Now, on the other side, you have Chauncey Billups. Now, Chauncey Billups is a guy I really respect because he was a late bloomer, but he stayed true to his craft. He never gave up, and he always worked hard. And he was always a humble guy out there on the court. He was professional, and he was a leader of men. Chauncey Billups was a real true leader of men, in the point guard perspective, in just basketball perspective, he was a true leader. The way he ran that Detroit Pistons crew and the way he ran that offense, whether it was Larry Brown or Flip Saunders, Chauncey Billups was always the head of the snake. Y'all should never forget that. Chauncey Billups will always be the head of the snake. If Chauncey Billups out there on the court, he's going to orchestrate some type of offensive scheme that you're going to really have to buckle down against. Because he was so strategic. How to get Rip Hamilton open around screens, when and where to post Rashid up, or to rotate Antonio McDyess and Ben Wallace with the pick and rolls and screens, and he knew when Tayshaun was going to be running on the break. Chauncey Billups was a true quarterback. He was your he was your Dan Marino, or Joe Montana. What I'm saying, John Elway. He was one of those type of guys, real quarterback. Allen Iverson was the free soul that put the ball in the hole. That's what he was. That was AI. but both of the games were powerful in their own way. And when they made that trade, it completely flipped both of the realities of the two organizations because, like I said, the Denver Nuggets was 8th seed, 50 and 32 record. They were good, but the West was so stacked. I mean, you had the Lakers with Kobe, R.I.P. Kobe, man. We got the Lakers with Kobe and Pau Gasol, and Andrew Bynum was coming up, and they had Ariza at the time. And then you had the, of course, Dirk Nowitzki in Dallas. You had those guys. Chris Paul and the New Orleans Hornets. You had those guys. Brandon Roy with Portland. I mean, the West was just stacked. The Suns with Nash. The Spurs. The consistent, deadly Spurs. Always busting your head open every year. So the Nuggets, I mean, they were in a fight to be 8th. They're lucky they got there. In my opinion, the Golden State Warriors should have got that 8th seed in 2008. But that's another story I'm going to touch up on that I will never forget neither. So when they made the trade with Chauncey Billups and Allen Iverson, first thing I thought was, okay, Chauncey get to go back home because he's from Colorado, he's from Denver, he's from that area, and he played there in college. He was a starter in college, so I'm thinking, okay, Chauncey gets to go back home. That's cool. And I'm thinking, okay, Allen Iverson got a chance to probably get to the finals or finally get a championship because the Piston crew was close the year before. They were second in the East to Boston, and they had a chance to beat Boston. It's just certain things didn't go their way. They blew a couple leads. What did them in was they lost game 1 close. They won game 2. That was cool. But when they lost game 3, ooh, man. I believe it was game 3 they lost or game 4. One of those games they lost. And I know in game 6, they were at home. I think they had 11-point lead late down the stretch when they were 4 minutes to go, and they blew that. So just missed opportunities, and the Celtics were just hungrier than Detroit. Even though Detroit had the clutch gene, they had the veteran gene in them to get there. It's just the hunger was just different for Boston. The hunger they had in 2004, that's what the Celtics had in 2008. And 2008 Celtics, they just uplifted over those guys. So when you add in Allen Iverson, you're thinking, okay, he's going to add a little bit more speed, a little more flair to it, and they're going to get it done. They're going to get there. But you have a new coach with Michael Curry. And, he talked the talk a lot, but his walk was just weird. The way he played the certain players and his rotations was just awkward. And they just weren't listening to him like they listened to Flip Saunders or Larry Brown before. And this was an older team. And when you deal with a veteran team, veteran players don't want to deal with rookie coach BS. They have no time for that. If you won the championship before, you have no time to be listening to some, you have no time for my bads. Oh, I'm sorry. No, you have no time for none of that. Or I'm a new coach. I'm trying to get used to. No. They want to win immediately. They were in the EConference finals. For the 4th or 5th time, consecutively. So when Allen Iverson got there, they started off pretty decent, but with what I didn't realize and what a lot of other people didn't realize was that was an older player joining an older team. AI was 32 going on 33 years old with a lot of minutes played. He played 41 minutes a game in the 08 season. And coming into the 08-09 season with the Nuggets, he had like I think it was a knee injury. I believe he had a knee injury. It was a slight knee injury that was bothering him, and it seemed like the minutes and wear and tear on Iverson and the minutes and wear and tear on the rest of the Pistons outside of Billups, it finally collided together. Everything went to slop together. Everything went to slop together. It's just age. Father Time just caught up with everybody, and the chemistry just wasn't clicking in Detroit. And I saw some games I can remember where the Pistons had hope, where I saw them beat Kobe and the Lakers in L.A. They beat the Spurs in San Antonio. They beat Memphis in Memphis on MLK Day. And the Pistons looked it really good. And I'm like, okay, this thing with Iverson and Hamilton, the way they running it seems pretty cool. They look like they're a guard-oriented team now because how the way Iverson dominates the ball, but Rip gets his touches, Rasheed does his thing, and they know how to rotate Tayshaun. They should be all right. That's what I thought. I'm thinking, okay, they go be all right. But once they start making those moves, and he went small ball one time and had Tayshaun playing power forward. One time, Kwame Brown was doing okay. Then they took him out, put him back in, took him out, put him back in. You know how Kwame Brown was. Too many changes on a bad note. He loses confidence or he loses his care for it because he's like, psychologically, he was done. He was done in by then. And the common denominator that went left was Rodney Stuckey, and Rodney Stuckey was a really good player coming out of college and going into the NBA. And if I'm not mistaken, the Pistons had a chance to select Joakim Noah and quite a few other players, but they chose Rodney Stuckey. And Rodney Stuckey, at one point, I was like, okay, so they got him to be Chauncey Billups' replacement, which they did. And for some reason, Joe Dumars had a liking of Rodney Stuckey. He probably thought, okay, he reminded himself or a slight version of him and Isaiah back in like the bad boy era. And Stuckey did have a good, crossover, force drive into the basket game. He modeled his game after D Wade. He was kind of like a Lil Wade. Rodney Stuckey, I'll say that. Like if Harold Miner was Baby Jordan, I'll say Rodney Stuckey was like Baby Wade, Baby Dwayne Wade. He was kind of like that, but more of a point guard version of Dwayne Wade. But Rodney Stuckey, sometimes his IQ level of when to shoot, when to pass, it was coming together, but it wasn't all the way there yet to be like a starting point guard and lead a team. And I feel like they kind of forced the agenda too quickly. Even though Iverson was getting older, he was banged up, and Rip was kind of Richard Hamilton, my boy Rip, even though he was kind of banged up too from all those years of playing deep in the playoffs, he still had juice left, still had a lot of juice left. He was still, if not all-star caliber, close to all-star caliber, or in consistency, he was still up there, a respectable player. And when they made that move to put either Iverson on the bench or Richard Hamilton on the bench, but start Rodney Stuckey, and he would never have to come off the bench for the rest of the season, it was like, okay, the veterans wasn't having it. Once again, trying new stuff, experiments on veteran teams, it just don't work. And Iverson, his ego, he's AI, he don't come off no bench. So he did not respond well to that. And Richard Hamilton, he pouted all the way to the season ended and through the playoffs. He didn't like the fact that they traded Chauncey. Chauncey was his guy. He probably was mutually cool with AI as a competitor, saying, yeah, you cool, but Chauncey was his guy. That was his boy. So he was just screw it damn near all the way through the season. and he was still doing his thing, trying his best. Rasheed was banged up. And you see, if the Pistons would have did it right, they would have tried to gotten that they were 8th seed in 2009, and the 66-16 Cavaliers swept them. And I felt kind of bad for the Pistons because they looked it real bad out there. Iverson, he had back issues. Plus, he didn't want to come off the bench, so he was like, screw it. So he basically took a leave of absence and said F it. But when they matched up against Cleveland, it was a team that was older and just coming apart versus a team that was just coming together and finding itself into playoff mode. And the Cavaliers did away with them. And I saw the agenda of TNT. They were really happy that the Pistons was finally done. The going to work crew, or the Bad Boys Part 2, like that crew was finally put to rest. And they treated it like it was it was a happy thing somebody died. Like damn. Like they was really trying to get rid of Detroit Pistons. For some reason, I think the NBA just got out for that franchise whenever they get good, or just that hard working defensive heavy mind state. For some reason, the NBA just like, okay, they always got it out for those outspoken teams, and I feel like the Pistons are one of them. And they should have gotten to a higher seed to play Orlando. They could have been better against Orlando in 2009. They wouldn't have won against Orlando, but they probably at least got a game or two due to Rasheed Wallace always getting to Dwight Howard's head. That would at least got them a game or two, with everybody trying at least their best. But, when you have a rookie coach or a coach that's just in over his head and, new chemistry dealing with a new player, you lose your identity. And that's what happens to the Pistons in 08, 09. They lost their identity. While the Denver Nuggets on the other end, the Denver Nuggets under the new leadership of Chauncey Billups, they gained a new identity, and they wasn't playing breakneck fast like they was when they had Iverson, or just popping up and shooting threes like they had Iverson, or even when they had Andre Miller at point guard. People don't talk about him enough neither, Andre Miller. But with Chauncey Billups as the leader, they played a little slower. Their strategy was more strategic. There was more deliberate about like who gets the ball and when. And of course, Chauncey Billups has a really good order of knowing how to feed the players. That Nuggets team was a really good team too. They had Nene, J.R. Smith, Anthony Carter, Marcus Camby, Kenyon Martin. Carmelo Anthony was the guy, and then you got Chauncey Billups just really manipulating it in a really good way, and as a leader. That's what Chauncey Billups was, as a leader. So he proved a lot of that, how he got them to second place in the West with him and Carmelo Anthony and the coach George Karl. They got the second place in the West, and they lost to the Lakers in 6. But it's crazy how you trade places and worlds change. In 2008, the Nuggets were 8th and the Pistons were 2nd. And then in 2009, the Nuggets were 2nd and the Pistons were 8th. Yes, that Nuggets team was a really good team. And on the other note, the Pistons couldn't handle it differently. Now, it's crazy to imagine like how the season would have went for both teams if they would have never made the trade. If they would have never made the trade, I say this because sometimes I think about this, or I think about that swap and that move in that moment. If they would have never made the trade, I'll say the Nuggets would have probably been similar to how they was in 2008, like 8th seed, 7th seed, around that era, or if not around that spot, probably a little below, like ninth, and then they probably would have gotten rid of Iverson then, or gotten rid of a couple pieces then. If not, get rid of Iverson, get rid of a couple of other people who were probably suspect of getting moved. But of course, Carmelo stays until he goes to the Knicks. Nothing happens to Melo. But with the Pistons, it's weird because you never know how they would have played under Michael Curry as a coach and Chauncey Billups still being there. Now, they probably would have tuned him out if they would have had a couple bad losses, and Chauncey Billups would have probably been the player coach. It would have been interesting to see, because I always believe he was really good at communicating with his teammates and talking to Rashid and Rip and Tayshaun and those guys. They had Delfino. They had my guy Carlos Arroyo. That guy right there, he was dope. But it just goes to show you how, worlds change and things flip like a pancake, man. The next thing you know, you just trade places. And what happened with the Pistons really set them back, 5, 6 years and counting, because the Pistons haven't been in respectability since they moved Billups. And the Nuggets, it worked out fine for them because they were able to use Chauncey Billups in the trade block with Carmelo to the Knicks so they could get, those players they got. And the wider cap space in future they was able to get off trade Melo. They benefit from that right now. Anytime you can move a max type of player, a max contract player, and free up cap space, get cheaper players that work hard, and a whole bunch of draft picks to go with it, whether it's from that team or another team, you winning as long as you know what to do with the draft picks and the young players you have. So, yeah, man, that was just video I wanted to do on that, man. I remember that like it was yesterday, man. 08, 09, the AI and Mr. Big Shot swap. Very weird. Y'all hit the like and y'all subscribe, man. Peace and hair grease.